All right? All right, State, call your next witness.
State calls Mr. Samuel Green.
All right. Counsel, identify yourselves for the record, please.
Son Blake for the state.
Miguel Castro, Captain Fletcher Morris.
All right. Prosecution, go ahead. Witness has been sworn.
Good afternoon. Could you please identify yourself for the record?
I am Samuel Green.
And what is your profession?
I am a advanced mathematics teacher here in the city,
Thank you.
in high school.
Now, I'd just like to turn your attention to the events of July 2nd, 2013, around 9 p.m. Could you just, where were you at that?
That was when I was waiting to go home. We had late school that evening, and I was at the bus stop with the LaSalle and Division waiting for the bus.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
Just putting here what has been marked Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Green, so you're familiar with this area?
Yeah, I pretty much every school day I come through this area and I'm waiting for the bus to take me home.
Okay, so you would say that this is a fair and accurate representation of the two streets?
The intersection, yes.
Could you please indicate, and I'll just give you this file later, where you were sitting on this diagram, please?
Objection. State hasn't moved the diagram in evidence yet.
Your Honor, I believe the exhibit was moved to evidence last day of trial.
My understanding is this was moved in last week.
Is it the same diagram?
If you're contesting that, she can certainly lay foundation. Are you contesting the...
Well, I'm contesting the actual distances on them. According to the facts, the lights were supposed to be 100 feet apart, and the car was 20 feet from the bus stop. And according to this thing here, or this map, the other light, which would be on the rear side of the car, looks about 20 feet away.
All right, well,
Which would be closer to.
all right, for the time being, why don't you
I'm not
lay...
going to amend that portion.
Why don't you lay whatever foundation you need to lay, and then we'll go from there.
Mr. Green, would it be fair and accurate to say that the bench next to where you were sitting was located close to the street lamp right there?
This one right here,
Yes.
the southeast corner
Yes.
of the intersection, yes. There's a street lamp right there.
Okay. And then the distance between the bench and the car marked on this exhibit, approximately how far would you say those two were?
From the bench to there, maybe 15, 20 feet, something of that nature.
Okay. And Your Honor, am I allowed to strike the bottom inch from this diagram here?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Just so that those two lights are not pictured.
I don't have it, if that's what he's saying.
I would prefer that.
All right, well, why don't you have him do that?
Okay. You can just cross out those two street lamps at the bottom.
Okay.
All right, so now based on the current diagram, you would say that all of the items pictured here are fairly and accurately represented?
I would say so, yes.
Your Honor, I move that this exhibit be moved into evidence.
Any objection now?
No objection.
Okay, it's admitted without objection.
Mr. Green, could you please again indicate the bench where you were sitting?
Yeah, I was right, again, like you said, it's highlighters. It's not working too well, but the southeast corner of that intersection.
Thank you. And I see that there is a there are several streetlights listed, pictured here, but the one next to you, is 9 o'clock at night. So the sun had set about half an hour before.
Yeah, I believe so, approximately that. But as you can see, and it's fairly clear in that area, this is a fairly major intersection. There were street lamps on each of the corners, as well as maybe a few hundred feet away, every so often down the street.
And this is a commercial area, so were there any lights from stores nearby, anything like that?
Here and there, yeah,
So it was a well-lit area?
I would say so.
Okay. So as you were waiting for the bus, were there a lot of people milling around? Was it a very busy area?
I would say from that time of day, it was fairly quiet. Here and there, a few pedestrians going through the area. I mean, like you had mentioned, there are businesses and stores there, people leaving work, things of that nature.
So not a lot of people around?
Not a ton, no.
So not much to look at, except for like the occasional person?
Occasional person, the vehicles that were parked down the streets.
Okay, so what did you see around 9 p.m. as you were leaving?
Well, I'm sitting there, usually I must have gotten there early with the bus, and maybe or late if you look at it that way and just missed the bus. And they're about 12 minutes apart as they go through that time of day. I looked to my left, there was a row of cars, and coming toward me, the last car in the row was a police officer, and, I saw the man sitting in there doing, I guess, paperwork or whatnot.
Okay, could you please mark the car on the diagram?
Sure. And as I guess we already discussed, probably about 15, 20 feet,
Okay.
which would have been to my left, down the street.
Okay. And you mentioned that you saw that the officer inside was male, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, and he was filling out some sort of paperwork?
That's what it looked like, yes.
So from a distance of 15 to 20 feet, you were able to notice this level of detail within the patrol car?
Well, it's not that difficult. I mean, I can't say the specificity of any paperwork before,
But you
but
could
that's...
still tell that he was filling out some kind of...
Sure, that's what it looked like, yes.
Okay, so you can see that. Okay. So, bear with me 1 minute, please. So, as you continued to sit there waiting for the bus, what happened next? What next did you observe?
Well, again, walking down or up the street, I guess, since it was facing north, there were 3 guys that walked up to and eventually approached the police car.
Okay, then what happened?
Well, I can't say I was paying ultimate attention to this as it happened, but there was a bang, basically like a shot, and then the same 3 guys came running from that car toward me, past me, turned onto Division Street, and then were gone.
Which way did they turn onto Division Street?
They turned, let's see, I was there, right, it would have been east, I believe, on Division Street.
And following from that, so you mentioned there were 3 men, and you heard the gunshot,
Correct.
and that's when you turned to really fix your full attention on them?
As far as fixing my attention on them, yes. I mean, I had seen them before, I saw them approach the vehicle, I really didn't think anything of it. And there were 2 guys on the curb side of the vehicle, and one had gone up behind it, but I mean, it's a busy city. There's all sorts of people who know, people do it. I try not to pay too much attention into other people's business.
Okay, so you weren't paying too much attention before the gunshot, but after that, where was your attention fixed?
Well, I mean, when the gunshot went off, I was fairly fixated on that area, and then ultimately the 3 guys running toward me, past me.
Okay. So, for how long would you say you were able to see their faces?
I would say from the time I really got to focus on them as they were running toward me, maybe about 15 seconds as they came through and ran by. Obviously, as they were past me and turned, I couldn't see their faces. They passed.
Okay. So, essentially, as they turned, they came from the cop car and ran toward you and then went either way or another on Division Street. You said 15 seconds, is that correct?
That I was face to face with them, that's probably about right.
Okay, so as they were running toward you, you were able to clearly see their faces?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget it. I mean, it was, at that moment, I was kind of shocked, a little scared. I didn't know whether they were coming after me and I was going to be next. I didn't know whether to run myself or what to do.
Right, well, I imagine this would be terrifying. So, I guess, how would you describe these men, having seen them running from the scene of the car?
Well, I mean, they're here, I mean, you know, the guy over there that testified earlier, and then these two guys over here.
So could you indicate the first person that you would identify?
Yeah, the gentleman there that testified the other day in trial.
Let the record please indicate that the witness has marked, who has identified Mr. Edwards, and the other two men that you described?
And then the two men that are over here at the council table were the other two.
And were you able to determine which man specifically was located at each position by the car that you mentioned?
Well, as I turned as they were leaving the car and running toward me, and there was one gentleman who I guess came to what would have been my left as they were coming toward me, the outside, who had come from behind the car, and that's the guy that testified the other day. And then the other two gentlemen, the one that was in the middle would have been seated next to the counsel in the yellow tie, and
Sorry,
then
so the middle man you indicated was which man? What was his location by the car?
he was, well, when they were at the car, the one that ultimately was running in the middle, I believe, was this guy right here. And then the one closest to the car would be sitting beside him.
Okay, so for the man that you just indicated that was very close to the car, leaning into the car, perhaps, that would be...
Objection.
Sustained. Sustained.
Okay. So the first man that you identified was the man that, where was he located?
The
Well,
first
let's just run
man,
this through again. So you said that you saw three men running from the car,
correct.
and you recognized distinctly that each one was at a different location as a car?
Well, two of them were beside, on the curbside by what would have been the passenger door.
Okay.
And then one, I believe, last I had seen them, but before the shot, was behind the car.
Okay.
And given the proximity of where they were as I turned after the shot, I'm assuming he ran from behind the car and kind of fell in line with them as they ran.
Okay, and that man that you just mentioned, you identified as Mr. Edwards, correct?
Who was behind the car and ultimately on the outside running.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And for the other two men, was there any distinction that you could remember in terms of their proximity to the car when you turned your attention to that area? Was one closer to
I mean,
the car?
one was closer to I mean, they were basically at the car, but one was a little bit closer to the other.
Okay, were you able to remember which one was which?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So you were able to identify each of the three men separately? I'm sorry, I'll move on. So you gave a description to Investigator Kelly.
Yeah, the police got there pretty quick.
Okay, so you immediately were able to give them a description.
Right.
Okay, and what details did you provide?
I mean, I described the gentleman the best I could, approximate heights, build, what they were wearing. I mean, I'm a math guy as far as, you know, my ability to, you know, relay the specificity, you know, and put those details into words. It would be like trying to draw their faces with an etch-a-sketch. It just wouldn't happen. But I mean, obviously, I mean, they're sitting right here in front of me today. I remember pretty well. So I gave as best a description as I could.
Okay, so you would say that maybe your linguistic skills in making this description and communicating it to others would not
Objection.
be...
Sustained.
So you're quite certain that you have a distinct memory of what those faces of those three men looked like as they ran by?
Oh, I'll probably never forget it for the rest of my life, unfortunately.
So after this, I assume you went home